Hello and welcome to my channel. I'm Michaela Peters. Today I'm going to talk more about the topic of workaholism in relation to the video that I just had on mental health. I do want to make a video on antidepressants. I thought about doing that today, but I'm a little bit scant on time and I need to go into work at the restaurant pretty soon here. So I'm going to respond briefly maybe to some of the comments here because I do think they're very interesting and I very much so appreciate your engagement, and I really love hearing the perspective of Finnish people with regards to these kinds of issues because it is so different than what I've experienced throughout most of my life. So in terms of workaholism, because while I was in Finland, I feel like I did have a lot more free time where while I was working, I would periodically take breaks and just Google random stuff that was of interest to me. And one of the things that I was interested in was specifically workaholism, what motivates somebody to be a workaholic, like where does it come from, how does that work? And apparently it stems from a lack of ability to emotionally regulate well. And I think that that makes a lot of sense because, as I mentioned, I became more aware of my mental challenges while living in Finland. And part of it is I think that if we're looking at like the Maslow's hierarchy of needs triangle, that at the bottom where you have, food, shelter, and all that, if I'm working harder in the US to make sure I'm just getting by, I may not have the space in my mind to be able to think more about how I'm feeling about things and how they're affecting me in a psychological way, which I think was a luxury that I had more time for in Finland. I didn't work as much in Finland as I do in the US, and I think I just had more time even while I was working to be able to explore these topics. So I recently also had so I was on the Fulbright scholarship, as I mentioned a couple times, and the Fulbright also does the Fulbright in reverse, where Finnish people will come to the US to study. And there was one girl who I connected with who was Finnish, living in the US, and we would talk about a lot of these issues, and one of them is, you should take care of yourself outside of work so that you can bring your best self to work and the most energy to work, because if you're just working all the time, you're going to get burnt out. And yes, I think that that's kind of true. I do think burnout is a serious issue. I myself have been feeling fairly burnt out because I've been working probably regrettably and admittedly maybe close to 50 to 60 hours a week. I'm not saying that to brag or be luxurious. I'm saying that just to illustrate that, yeah, that's what's going on for me. I'm working a full-time job, and on top of that I'm working moonlighting, as we call it, at the restaurant, either after my regular job during the week or on weekends primarily. And I have been thinking about whether I need to cut back with that a lot, but it almost does feel like a sort of addiction where I just want to keep picking up shifts, but there are a lot of reasons for that. And part of it is I live at home with my family, and sometimes that can be difficult if I'm being very honest. Especially after, I spent about 2 years living in Finland pretty independently and then coming back home. And so part of it is, yes, paying bills, and then part of it is this is the season for the restaurant. It's the only time when the money is there is during the summer, so I feel much more motivated to go and work. And I work from home and I don't get to interact with people a lot, and I do like interacting with people. And I was trying to go out with my friends, but a lot of the social life here, it's not like where I can just go to sauna and have a beer in there and talk to people. It's like I have to go out to eat a lot of times. It's the way that we handle everything here, and I'm going out to eat and you're leaving a tip, and you're dropping $100 sometimes, and it's like I don't want to drop $100 or $50 or whatever it is just to go spend time with my friends. So the workaholism in this case is a way that I am able to get some social interaction, and feel productive. And I think that this sort of, maybe addiction is a strong way of putting it, but like any sort of aholism, workaholism, alcoholism, whatever ism you have going on there, it is difficult for me to take a step back and be like, oh no, I should just intentionally slow down and be more present. It's very hard. And I think a lot of it too, and I've explored this a lot in my own psychological research that I did a lot of, especially during the time I was living in Finland, whereas here I regrettably have less time for that. That it's very natural for children to crave recognition and admiration, love, validation, all of these things from their parents. And I grew up with, and I don't think my dad will mind saying this, my dad is aware that he also has these workaholic tendencies. And I think from a young age, I really looked up to my dad and always wanted to be like him. And watching my dad work a lot and being very preoccupied with any time that he wasn't working his full-time job, he was doing work around the house, he was mowing the lawn, he always had some sort of house side project that he could find to work on, and he needed to be productive all the time. So I learned from a young age, oh, the way that I get validation from my dad is I just be productive all the time and I achieve a lot, and then he will love me. And yeah, like that's what I've been doing, and that's probably what I still do, where I'm living at home. And one of the ways that I don't get okay, criticize is the only word that comes to mind, sadly, but you know, that there's less of an inspection going on. What I'm doing is if I'm working a lot, because you can't really be getting into trouble if you're working a lot. I actually had somebody say this to me at the restaurant, where they're like, oh, well, you know, working a lot's good. It keeps you out of trouble. And, you know, at some point, it's just people are going to decide whether they want to get into trouble or not. People are always going to make time for what they decide is a priority. I think that making these videos is a priority for me. So I set aside about an hour every day to be able to record them and upload them. And yes, so that right now is my priority, because it's one thing that brings me a lot of joy amidst all this chaos where I'm working a lot. And I think also because of the level of enjoyment I'm able to have in other countries, it's like temporary. I think that if I worked like this much all the time and never had any sort of reprieve from it, then it would not be sustainable. But because, you know, I worked like this for a month and a half, and then I went to Finland, took a week off, and I'm going to do this for probably another month and a half, and then probably start to taper off, and then take another break. It's like a short period of time, so it's manageable. But I think the fact that it's rewarded and it's so revered, and because I, you know, also regrettably do not have a lot of very enjoyable interactions with people where I can just kind of sit and be present, because as I was explaining in the other video, America's a very doing culture. It feels like working a lot makes me feel safe emotionally. Like I'm aware that it's a way for me to cope with the way that my life is here. You know, I don't love the way that American culture is. While I would like to be the change, I'm also not responsible for changing the way that the entire mentality of an entire country. So that's why I always say, if you don't like it, you know, you can get up and leave. I mean, easier said than done, but it is an option. So, you know, why am I here working a lot? Because I believe that I can suppress short-term desires, like not working so much, for a longer-term desire, whether it is owning a house or having some sort of savings or being able to have enough money to go on a trip, which is where most of my money goes, if I'm being very honest. And it's also a way that I am accepted by society and by my family, like very honestly, and that's just the way that it is. So I guess that's my brief on workaholism. And like I said, I do want to go more into the depression discussion, the antidepressant discussion, because I have things I'd like to say about that, and that I'd like to hear more Finnish opinions on. And thank you very much for sharing your opinions below. I really love the one comment that talks about the, what was it, 9 different things that depression stems from in that one book. I'm totally going to check that out. Thank you so much for that recommendation. I'm apparently supposed to give shout outs to people. That's what my sister, who loves YouTube, was telling me about. So I'm looking really quick to see if I can find it, but it's gonna take me a minute, so maybe not. Okay, I can't find it that quickly, so sorry about that. But yes, so thank you very much for watching this, for your participation. I really love it a lot, and I will keep trying to make these videos, and I hope that they increase in quality over the next couple of months, because I want to stick with this. It's something that brings me a lot of enjoyment, and I'm really happy to get the engagement. It's really like one of my new hobbies is reading these comments. I love it so much. So again, I try to respond to a lot of them or make more content that's relevant to them, and I hope it's interesting to you. So thank you so much for your participation. Really, I can barely explain how much it means to me and how much it engages me, and brings me back to these conversations that I used to love having with people in Finland that I do not have right now because I'm not there. So thank you, everybody, and I look forward to interacting with you again soon, and until my next video. Thank you. Bye.